During our housewarming, my in-laws whispered to guests that I was temporary, a placeholder in their son's life, like a cheap rug they expected Ryan to replace. The words didn't just sting, they gutted me, carving out a hollow space in the home I'd built with love and sweat. I'm Emily, 29, married to Ryan for 14 months. Our Seattle bungalow, a fixer-upper we'd transformed over countless weekends, was supposed to be the backdrop for a joyful new chapter. That night, it became a battlefield where I was ambushed in my own kitchen. Ryan and I met at a friend's barbecue 3 years ago. He's my anchor, steady, with a quiet wit that cuts through my anxious spirals. His parents, Linda and Greg, were polite at first, their Boston reserve masking what I later recognized as judgment. Linda's barbs were subtle but sharp, a jab at my artsy job as a graphic designer, a smirk when I said kids weren't on my immediate horizon. Greg, her silent enforcer, nodded along. I swallowed my unease, convinced by Ryan's reassurances that they'd warm up. "They're just old school," he'd say. I clung to that hope like a lifeline. The housewarming was my vision, a chance to weave our lives together. I obsessed over every detail, fairy lights twinkling on the patio, a playlist blending Ryan's jazz with my indie rock, a spread of homemade appetizers that screamed, "We belong here." Friends, neighbors, and Ryan's family filled the house, their laughter warming the air. I was in the kitchen, arranging prosciutto on a charcuterie board, when Linda's voice slithered through the chatter. "She's sweet, but temporary," she murmured to a guest, her tone dripping with certainty. "Ryan's too discerning for this. Claire, now she was permanent material." Greg's low grunt of agreement was a dagger, and the guest's nervous laugh twisted it deeper. I stood rooted, cheese knife trembling in my hand. Temporary? Me? The woman who'd spent months scraping wallpaper, painting walls, and dreaming of a future here? Rage surged, hot and blinding, but shame followed, cold and heavy. I imagined storming in, hurling their words back at them, but my body betrayed me, locked in place. Linda's praise of Claire, Ryan's ex, the polished lawyer, felt like a verdict. I was a mistake, a phase. I slipped into the pantry, my breath ragged, tears burning. Ryan was outside, oblivious, his laugh echoing through the open window. Did he know? Had he heard this poison before? I forced myself back to the party, my smile a brittle mask. Every glance from Linda was a taunt, every guest's smile a question mark. Had she whispered to them too? Was I the fool, playing hostess while they bet against my marriage? The night dragged on, each moment a fresh wound. When the last guest left, I collapsed onto the couch, the silence deafening. Ryan, clearing glasses, asked if I was okay. I wanted to scream, to demand why his mother thought I was disposable. But fear stopped me. Fear he'd defend her. Fear I'd unravel. Instead, I mumbled, "Just tired." In bed, the ceiling seemed to press down, Linda's words looping like a cruel mantra. This wasn't just a slight, it was sabotage. My home, my marriage, my worth, all dismissed in a whisper. As dawn crept through the curtains, a fire kindled in me. I wasn't temporary, and I'd make damn sure Linda knew it. The next morning, the house felt different, like the walls themselves had absorbed Linda's venom. I woke early, the sting of her words still raw, and found Ryan in the kitchen brewing coffee. He smiled, oblivious to the storm brewing in me, and asked if I'd slept okay. I wanted to blurt it all out, his mother's betrayal, the humiliation, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I nodded, muttering something about a headache. I needed time to think, to plan. Confronting Linda head-on felt right. But what if Ryan took her side? What if I looked like the paranoid wife, picking fights? Doubt gnawed at me, but so did my anger. I wasn't about to let this fester in silence. Linda and Greg were staying with us for the weekend, a detail I'd once been excited about but now dreaded. Over breakfast, Linda was all smiles, complimenting the house as if she hadn't trashed me the night before. "Such a charming place," she said, buttering a scone. "You've done, well, for what it is." The backhand was subtle, but it landed. Greg nodded, his eyes on his plate. I gripped my mug, the heat burning my palms, and forced a tight smile. Ryan, scrolling his phone, didn't notice the undercurrent. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. I spent the day replaying her words, searching for clues in her behavior. Was her politeness a cover? Had she always seen me as a placeholder? I remembered small moments, her insistence on keeping Claire's photo in their family album, her questions about my long-term plans with a skeptical tilt. The pieces clicked, forming a picture of quiet sabotage. By afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, but confronting her with Greg and Ryan around risked a blowout. Instead, I decided to test the waters, to see how far her disdain ran. At dinner, I steered the conversation to our future. "Ryan and I were thinking about hosting Thanksgiving here," I said, watching Linda's face. "Make it a tradition, you know, build something lasting." Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she recovered. "Oh, that's ambitious," she said, her tone syrupy. "Traditions take time. Dear, you're still so new to all this." The word new hit like a slap, implying I was an outsider, temporary. Greg coughed, shifting in his seat. Ryan, bless him, jumped in, oblivious to the subtext. "Yeah, Em's got big plans. She's all about roots." I loved him for it, but his words didn't erase the chill in Linda's eyes. Later, as I washed dishes, Linda joined me, drying plates with a practiced ease that felt invasive. "You're good for Ryan," she said suddenly, her voice low. "For now. He's always been selective. You know, needs someone who can keep up." My hands stilled in the soapy water. Was this a warning? A test? I turned to face her, my pulse racing. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Her eyes narrowed, just a flicker, before she smiled. "Of course, dear, I didn't mean anything by it." But she did. I saw it in the way her lips tightened, the way she turned away too quickly. That night, I told Ryan I needed to talk. We sat on the patio, the fairy lights still up, casting soft shadows. I didn't mention Linda's whisper yet. I wasn't ready, but I asked if he thought his parents approved of me. He frowned, surprised. "They love you," he said. "Mom's just intense. She's like that with everyone." His words were meant to comfort, but they felt hollow. I pressed, asking if he'd ever heard them compare me to Claire. His hesitation, brief but real, was a punch to the gut. "Not really," he said, looking away. "Maybe once, early on, but it's nothing. They're over it." Over it? Or biding their time? I went to bed with a sinking feeling. Linda's words weren't a one-off, they were part of a pattern, and Ryan's vague answers suggested he might know more than he let on. The tension was no longer just between me and Linda. It was creeping into my marriage, a crack I couldn't ignore. I needed to confront her, but I needed proof, something undeniable, to make Ryan see the truth. Tomorrow, I'd find a way to force her hand. By Sunday morning, the air in the house was thick with unspoken truths. Linda's whispered betrayal and her veiled jabs had built a pressure I could no longer contain. I woke with a plan, not just to confront her, but to expose her in a way that left no room for denial. Ryan was still asleep, his face peaceful, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. I loved him, but his hesitation last night, his vague maybe once about his parents' comparisons to Claire, had shaken me. I needed him to see Linda's true colors, and I needed it to be undeniable. Over coffee, I watched Linda and Greg at the breakfast table, their routine so normal it was infuriating. Linda chatted about their flight back to Boston, her voice light, as if she hadn't spent the weekend undermining me. I decided to set a trap. I'd overheard her at the housewarming because she was careless, so I'd give her another chance to slip up, this time with witnesses. I suggested a casual brunch with a few friends who'd stayed in town, framing it as a send-off for Ryan's parents. Linda agreed, her smile tight, and Ryan thought it was a great idea. Perfect. I invited Sarah and Mike, close friends who'd been at the housewarming and knew me well enough to pick up on tension. I also invited our neighbor, Jen, who'd mentioned hearing gossip that night but hadn't elaborated. The brunch was set for noon in our backyard, the same patio where I'd questioned Ryan under the fairy lights. I prepped a spread, mimosas, quiche, fresh fruit, while my mind raced. If Linda repeated her poison, I'd call her out. If she didn't, I'd push until she cracked. The brunch started smoothly, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Linda played the doting mother-in-law, complimenting my quiche with a patronizing, "You're quite the little hostess, Emily." I smiled, my jaw tight, and waited. Halfway through, I steered the conversation to our marriage, knowing it would provoke her. "Ryan and I have been talking about our first anniversary," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe a trip, something to celebrate how solid we are." I squeezed Ryan's hand, watching Linda from the corner of my eye. Her fork paused mid-air, and her lips thinned. "Anniversaries are sweet," she said, her tone syrupy. "Though, Ryan, you always did love those big gestures with Claire. Remember that weekend in Nantucket?" The table went quiet. Sarah's eyes flicked to me, and Jen raised an eyebrow. Ryan shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom, that was ages ago," he said, his voice tight. But Linda pressed on, oblivious or deliberate. "Oh, I know, but Claire was so established. It's hard not to compare, sometimes." Greg cleared his throat, but she ignored him. I seized the moment, my heart pounding but my voice calm. "Compare? Linda? Like you did at the housewarming, when you told people I was temporary?" The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Linda froze, her face paling. Ryan turned to me, stunned. What?" he said, his voice low. Sarah and Mike exchanged glances, and Jen leaned forward, her expression confirming she'd heard something similar that night. Linda recovered quickly, laughing it off. "Oh, Emily, you must have misheard. I'd never say such a thing." But I wasn't backing down. "I heard you," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "In my own living room, telling guests I wouldn't last, praising Claire, like I'm some stand-in, and you've been at it all weekend, haven't you? Hinting I'm not good enough." My voice shook, but I didn't care. Ryan's face darkened, his gaze shifting to his mother. "Mom, is this true?" he asked, his tone dangerously quiet. Linda's composure cracked. "Ryan, she's twisting things," she snapped. "I was just talking. You know how people gossip. I didn't mean it like that." But Greg, silent until now, shifted uncomfortably, his silence damning. Jen spoke up, hesitant. "I heard something like that too. Linda, at the party. It didn't sound like a joke." The table was a minefield now, every glance loaded. Ryan stood, his chair scraping the patio. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk. Inside. Now." His voice was steel, and my chest tightened with a mix of relief and dread. As they filed into the house, Sarah squeezed my arm, whispering, "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. I'd forced the truth into the open. But at what cost? The confrontation I'd craved was here, but it felt like the start of something bigger, something I couldn't control. I stayed outside, staring at the half-eaten quiche, wondering if I'd just saved my marriage or broken it. The backyard was eerily quiet after Ryan led his parents inside, the clink of brunch dishes replaced by a heavy stillness. I stayed outside, my hands trembling as I stacked plates, Sarah and Mike lingering to help but giving me space. My heart raced with a mix of triumph and terror. I'd exposed Linda. But what now? Would Ryan believe me? Would he confront his mother or smooth things over, like he always did? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I knew one thing. I'd fought for my place in this marriage, and I wasn't backing down. Inside, I could hear raised voices through the open window, Ryan's sharp, Linda's defensive. I couldn't make out words, but the tone told me this wasn't a casual chat. Jen, before leaving, had pulled me aside and whispered, "You did the right thing. That was brave." Her words anchored me, a reminder that I wasn't alone in seeing Linda's cruelty. Still, as minutes stretched into what felt like hours, doubt crept in. What if Linda spun a story that painted me as the villain? What if Ryan, torn between his mother and me, chose peace over truth? Finally, the back door opened and Ryan stepped out, his face drawn. Linda and Greg followed, their expressions a mix of defiance and discomfort. Ryan didn't look at them as he crossed the patio to me. Can we talk?" he said, his voice low but steady. My stomach twisted, but I nodded, setting down a plate. Sarah and Mike excused themselves, and Linda and Greg retreated to the guest room, their silence louder than any argument. We sat at the patio table, the fairy lights now dim in the daylight. Ryan took my hand, his grip firm. "I'm sorry," he started, his eyes meeting mine. "I didn't know Mom said that at the housewarming. I didn't know she was like this. But I believe you. Jen heard it too, and Dad didn't deny it." His voice cracked, and I saw the weight of it, his mother's betrayal, not just of me, but of him. I asked her why. She said she was protecting me, that she thought you weren't serious enough. It's bullshit. I told her she's wrong and she needs to apologize. I exhaled, relief flooding me, but it was bittersweet. "Ryan, it's not just the housewarming," I said, my voice shaking. "It's the whole weekend, her jabs, the way she talks about Claire like I'm a downgrade. And you hesitated when I asked about her. That hurt." He flinched, his grip tightening. "I know," he said. "I didn't want to worry you. They mentioned Claire early on, before we got married, but I thought they'd stopped. I should have told you. I'm so sorry." The apology was raw, and I believed him, but the pain lingered. We talked for a long time about his parents, our future, the cracks this had exposed. He promised to set boundaries with Linda, to make it clear she couldn't disrespect me again. "You're my wife," he said fiercely. "This is our home, our life. She doesn't get to decide what's permanent." Later, Linda approached me, Greg trailing behind. Her apology was stiff, more obligation than sincerity. "I didn't mean to upset you." "Emily," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "I was just talking. I'll be more careful." It wasn't enough, but I didn't need her groveling. I needed her to know I wasn't going anywhere. "I appreciate that," I said coolly, "but this is my home, and I'm here to stay. Let's be clear on that." She nodded, lips tight, and walked away. Greg mumbled something about sorting it out and followed her. That night, after they left for their hotel, Ryan and I sat on the couch, the house quiet again. We didn't pretend everything was fixed. Trust takes time to rebuild, and Linda's shadow would linger. But we were together, stronger for facing the truth. I felt lighter, like I'd reclaimed my place in our home. The fairy lights outside flickered, a reminder of the life we were building, one we'd fight for. Thanks for reading, everyone. This was a wild ride to share. If you've got thoughts on in-laws, confrontations, or just keeping it real, drop a comment, like, or share. Your support means the world